Hello Booktube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. This video is a mid-year check-in that is going to be based on the mid-year Freakout tag. I'm not freaking out. I don't understand the concept of freaking out when it comes to books, but I understand the concept of the mid-year check-in, so that's what we're going to do. I'm only including books that I've read between January 1 and June 30. So the first 6 months of the year. I'm filming this in mid-July, so I've read a few more books since then, but only the first 6 months count for this video. Also, only books that I have finished count, because this year, more than usual, I've started books and not finished them. And it's not because I DNF them. It's not like Sean says that I bail on them. I don't bail on the books. It's just that for some reason, my interest is diverted. There's a shiny new book and I prefer to read the shiny new book. And then the shiny new book probably will be supplanted by another shiny new book before I finish the second one. And I end up with like 15 books on my currently reading pile. And I don't like that. But anyway, that's the situation this year. I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the year, I made a few videos in a background that was a bit chaotic because I was having renovation done in my apartment. It's not finished, but it's my fault, so I'm not complaining. I need to hire someone to do the painting. I could do the painting myself, but I don't want to do the painting myself. But apparently I want even less the trouble of hiring a contractor. So I'm stuck with the painting still not done and most of my books still in boxes because I figure there's no point in filling the bookshelves or the bookcases if I have to move the bookcases away from the wall in like a week. So anyway, my fault. So the situation was a bit stressful then, and then at work, there was a lot of stress at work. It has started to calm down. It calmed down a little bit for the past few weeks. The bosses were away on vacation, but now they're back. So stress will come back. And also at home, my parents are in a transition phase. My mother broke an arm at the end of March, and now they are selling the house and emptying the house, the family home that has been the family home for 40 years, and they are moving into an apartment. So I'm trying to support them as much as I can. So that means that I spend quite a few weekends at my parents' place and not here. So that so for all of these reasons, my mind was a bit all over the place, and I did not have the mental space to read. So when I counted the number of books that I read, I was surprised actually by the number. I was expecting a much lower number. So a few stats to start before we dive into the tag. So in the first 6 months of the year, I read 47 books. I'm surprised by the number. I was expecting something like 30. So there's it's really more than I thought. Of that, it's 20 nonfiction and 27 fiction. However, and that might be the answer to the mystery, to the puzzle, of the 27 fiction book, 18 were romance books. 18 romance books. So that's quite a lot. And it's not so much that the romance are very short. It's not, I tend to read historical romance that are 350, 400 pages. But it's just that it reads so much quicker than any other type of book. It's like candy. It's easy to gobble them in an evening or two, in just one day, in a non-busy weekend. Not that I had many of those, but it's easy to consume. So that's the reason why I could read so many. And so that means it leaves 9 books for other types of fiction. And of these 9 other types of fiction, there was 2 plays, 1 epic poem, 1 slim collection of poetry, 1 graphic novel, which will come up in this tag, and 1 mystery, and that leaves only 3 regular novels. So that's not a lot, and all 3 will show up in this tag. I hadn't planned on it, but it's just going to happen like that. So without further ado, the questions of the tag. So first question is, best book you've read so far? And I think that question should be answered last, because it's like best movie of the year at the Oscars. It's answered last. So we'll go to that one at the end. Second question is best sequel. Now, I don't have a ton of choices for that because As I said, I didn't read that much fiction. I read a lot of romance, and there are a lot of series in romance. However, I don't necessarily read them in order. I pick them up the way they appear, and I don't care. However, there are some that I read deliberately in order from 1 to 2, 3, 4 to 8. Or 9 or 10 or whatever. One of them is the Bridgerton series. I've read the 7th book this year, and it was not memorable, so it is not the answer to this question. I read that one in February, March, and when the Netflix adaptation of the 3rd book came out, and I saw the character of Hyacinth, who is the heroine of the 7th book, I thought, oh, I know her story. And I was trying to think of the story, and nothing came up. I had forgotten it. And then I went to pick up the book and just read the back of the book to try to remind myself, okay, what again was her story? And okay, I recognize the name of the guy, but I don't remember the story at all. So really not memorable. So my choice for that will be, it's over here. Books number 5 and number 6 in the Palace of Rogues series by Julianne Long. So the Palace of Rogues, it's the former name of the Grand Palace on the Thames, and that is a hotel, I guess, that was opened by the characters who turned out to be the heroines of the books number 1 and 2. The heroine of the first book was a widow who was left basically penniless by her husband. The only thing that was left to her was this building that used to be called the Palace of the Rogues, near the docks in London. It's not a nice place, and the heroine of the first book and the one who will be the heroine of the second book, but who is present obviously in the first book, they decide to open to transform that palace and that building and turn it into a hotel. A proper and respectable establishment, not a brothel like it used to be. And this building is the place where all these nice people meet. Very nice and handsome people. And that's where the story happened. And what I like about this series is that the heroines are not necessarily 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds and making their entrance in life. Most of them have some experience of life, and that makes them much more interesting. The exception so far is in book number 3, but in book number 5 and book number 6, the heroine is a bit naive, but doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much. Anyway, so it's just fun, a lot of fun. I really love that series. And there are 2 more books that have been published. There's just one more. The 7th was published in April, and I think I saw that another one would be coming later. But anyway, the series is still going, and it's wonderful. I really like it. Question number 3, new release you haven't read yet, but want to. That one is a nonfiction, and that is Language City, The Fight to Preserve Endangered Mother Tongues in New York by Ross Perlin. So the subtitle says it all. It's about a place where they are trying to save languages. They are recording it, and they are gathering books, if there are any, printed in that language. They are trying to preserve these languages. And surprisingly enough, well, not really surprisingly, but New York is a place where people come from all over the world, and that includes people who speak languages that are about to die. So it's a subject that interests me, so I want to read that. Question number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't really pay attention to that, so I don't know. As I said, there's a book coming up in the Palace of Rogues series, so I suppose I'll want to read that, but then I haven't read the 7th one, so I'm not necessarily ready to jump on the 8th one already. So it's anticipated, but maybe not that much. So I don't have really an answer for that. Question number 5, biggest disappointment. Now, for you who don't read in French, that's not going to make any difference because it's a book in French that is now translated in English. And I think nothing of this author is translated in English. I haven't checked though. It's not impossible that something might be translated, but it is the author Simon Boulris, and this is Le Premier qui rira. The reason I was disappointed, perhaps my expectations were too high. I had read in a newspaper, in an article by a not necessarily a book critic, but somebody who comments about culture and about books. Somebody whose opinion, without saying that I always agree with that person, I can find things in her column. And she was saying that the books of Simon Boulris just brought her joy. Not necessarily that they were feel-good books, that was not the subtitle, the subtext in her column, but it was just that the reading of it brought her pleasure. And I thought, okay, I think we could be on the same wavelength for that. So I picked this book because I thought it sounded fun. So the main character is this woman. She is 40-something years old. She is a cashier at a store, Giant Tiger, which is a store selling cheap clothing and household goods, and it's a store for ordinary people, so it doesn't have a high cachet. It's for cheap stuff. She works as a cashier there. She's a single mother. She has 2 teenage sons that she loves, but she's not enamored of them. She doesn't really get along with the eldest one. She prefers the younger one, but then again, I think she prefers him just because he's less trouble. So she's not mother of the year exactly, but she's not a bad mother either. She just does the best that she can, and it just happens not to be much. And her favorite activity is a laughing yoga. I think that's how it's called. Once a week, she goes to this class where they just laugh and laugh and laugh. In that class, there's also a student in a college in Montreal. They get along fine, they become friends, and she sort of sees him as the son she wishes she had. And then there's a third character. So it's one of the reasons why I bought the book, because it said that there's a trio dépareillé. So dépareillé. I have no idea how to say that in English. Very like undépareillé, that doesn't have its equal. So very singular trio, like singular inside, exceptional. The thing is that the third character does not meet the first two until very, very late in the book. And the story of the third character does not intersect with the story of the first two characters until the very end of the book. So that was a bit disappointing. But the most disappointing thing was that the characters are a bit too real. We follow them in the bedroom when they have sex, not in a sexy way. When they masturbate, we follow the main character to the bathroom when she's doing her things. Do I have to read that? It was... I didn't like it. I really did not like it. And the thing is, I don't know if it's just for this book or if the author does that for all of his characters in all of his books. Do we follow them to the bathroom? All of them? I don't suppose there's a million ways to go to the bathroom, so hopefully it's a phase that the author, okay, he did it once, he's not going to do it again. So I'll probably give the author another chance, because I don't think that 1 is a pattern, 2 is a pattern, definitely. So I would need to read a second one to see if the pattern repeats. So that's the disappointment. I was expecting a lot, so perhaps it was my expectations that was too high. Then question number 6, biggest surprise. And that is another nonfiction, Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution by Kat Bohannon. And that's a book I read for the Booktube Prize. And that's the very reason why I read the Booktube Prize. I always find books that I would not have picked up on my own. So this is a book of natural history. The author talks about evolution, but from the point of view of women, because we talk about the evolution of men, but she makes the case that the evolution is really driven by women. What is the difference between, let's say, the mode of reproduction of a bird and that of a mammal? Well, it's all about the women, because the male anatomy, well, of course, a bird and a mammal are not made the same way, but basically their reproductive organs are the same. But for women, they are very different. So that's the case that she makes, not just with the birds and the mammals, but basically that's just an example that I'm showing. That's her main thesis, is that it's the woman's body that drove the evolution of the human being. And I think it's brilliant, and I loved it. So that's the biggest surprise. And it's not because I was not expecting to love it, it's that I was not expecting to pick it up, and then the Booktube Prize made me pick it up, and it was awesome. So I hope it continues a long way in the Booktube Prize. Next question. I'll have to turn it a little bit, quite a lot, on its head. So the next question is newest fictional crush. Now, even though I read a lot of romance, sorry about that, I just kicked to the tripod. So even though I read a lot of romance, I don't get crushes on the characters. So I decided to turn the question on its head. So it's not new, because it's a reread. It's not fictional because it's a non-fiction, and it's not a crush. It's not somebody I love. It's somebody that drives me nuts. I decided to interpret crush as someone who gets under your skin, and this one gets under my skin in the worst way. That is the author himself, Raymond Maufray, and the title in English is Journey Without Return. I read this for, I reread it for People April, so where an event that I host with Roz from Scally Dandling About the Books, where we invite you to read memoirs, biographies, and any non-fiction that focuses on the person. And this is a diary, a travel diary, travel notebook. The author, in the 1950s, he was a bit bored, let's say that. During World War II, he was very young. He was just a teenager, but he was very involved because he was in the resistance, and he tried to join, and he's not a last-minute resistant, like some people joined the resistance, like in late summer 1944. Not him. He was really part of the resistance. He lived a little bit outside, like he had to flee at some point and lived in the Maquis, and then he participated in the I can find the name, in the when the Allies, not so much the Allies, but the resistant force took Toulon, which is a port city near Marseille, and that is where he's from. And anyway, he wanted to be a great journalist, but somehow I can understand him that after having lived through so many adventures, you find yourself you find your life not very enticing. Being a journalist, going back to school, or just being a civil servant, it's kind of boring. So he decided he would be an explorer, and he decided that he would cross on foot the mountains dividing Guyana and Brazil. And at the time, it was a place where no Europeans had been. So it was indigenous people had been there more than a little bit, because actually the indigenous people living at the south, in the south of Guyana in the 1950s, were somewhat refugees of Brazil. So they had come from Brazil, so they had crossed these mountains. But our hero here wanted to cross it, be the first European to do that, or in his mind, the first man to do that, on his own. And he had never been there. He had been on one expedition in Brazil, so he kind of somewhat knew what to expect, but he was part of a group. This time, he wanted to do it alone, without any guides without any help from anyone. So at first, he took a boat up some river, and then at the end of civilization, I'm using quotation marks, so at the last white city there, and then again, city, it's more like a mining place, mining town. Anyway, he decided to continue on foot on his own, and he got lost. And some weeks later, an indigenous person walked by his camp, saw the notes, saw that it had not been occupied for a while, so he just took the notes and the things and brought them back to a mission that wasn't far. And that is how we know what happened, because the notebooks were found. And the man is an idiot. As I said, his experience was he had been part of an expedition in Brazil, but beyond that, he had been a Boy Scout in France. And being a Boy Scout in France does not help you survive in the jungles of South America. It's just no. It's just no. And everybody tells him, and not just everybody, it's clear and obvious that he will fail. It's clear and obvious that he's not prepared. When he arrived in Guyana, he decided to try and go for a weekend and just survive, see how it would go. And he came back with a bad infection to the foot, and he said, well, except for that, I'm just fine. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you're alone, far away from civilization, far away from anyone you speak the language with, far away from anything that you know, and that you have an infected foot? So already that was his clue, that just no, you're not going to make it. And he continues. And then the worst thing is he brings a dog with him. And the first time I read it, I thought, okay, he gets it. Well, somebody gave him a dog. So it's not so much that he decided to bring a dog. Somebody gave him a dog, and the dog would be his companion. And I thought at first, okay, the dog is going to be a companion. Okay, good for mental health. But then I know how much the dog suffers. So this time, anytime the dog was mentioned, I wanted to scream, "Leave the dog alone! Don't bring the dog!" Anyway, the guy got under my skin. On every page, I was screaming at him, "Idiot! Idiot! Don't do that! Stop! Stop right now! Turn around! Go back!" And it was an awesome read. And the awful thing is, the man died. It's quite obvious by the end that he dies, because the last entry is just so desperate that he's desperate, and there's no way he could survive that. So anyway, it's an excellent read. I recommend it very much. I suppose it must be rather hard to find in English, but it's totally worth it if you like exploration and adventure, I guess, or stupidity, because that one, he got under my skin. He got under my skin. So that's my newest fictional crush, i.e. a reread of nonfiction and someone I can stand. So question number 9, newest favorite character. Once again, I'm stuck. I don't quite know what's the difference between the newest fictional crush and the newest favorite character, but I'm kind of stuck. I don't have a new favorite character, so I'm just going to tell you that my favorite character that I read about, and it was a reread, a group reread with Classics and Company, and it's Jean Valjean. I love that character. What a wonderful character. So in Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, forgot to say the title of the book, but I suppose that you can guess. And yeah, it's just the most amazing character. Les Miserables is a huge book, so Jean Valjean is not on every page. He's not even, is he in every part of the book? Yeah, I think he is. But anytime he shows up on the page just lights up, because I think that's, well, I don't know what I think. I think it's Hugo's favorite character in all of this book. I think it was Hugo's favorite. I don't know. I haven't read anything about that, but it feels like this character was special for the author too. And anyway, it's a special character. I absolutely love him. So that's it's not new, but it's my favorite. Not book. Question number 10. A book that made you cry. Oh, look at that. It's the same. Les Miserables. Anytime that Jean Valjean and Cosette meet, not every time they meet, it's not true, but every time there's something emotional in their relation, it gets to me. I cry. So the scene depicted here when Jean Valjean goes to pick up Cosette. I'm back. I was not crying and my throat was parched and I was choking. So anyway, as I said, every time Jean Valjean and Cosette had a special moment in their relation, it got me to tears. So it's a good book. Question number 11. Book that made you happy. Now, for that one, it's special a little bit. So this is The Conqueror's Wife by Noel B. Gerson. So this is a historical novel. It is about William the Conqueror and his wife at the time of the conquest, of course, otherwise it would be boring. And the reason it made me happy is because this is a book that I picked up from my father's bookcase. When he was young in the 1950s, he was a patron of a book club. So this is a book club edition, as you can see. And as I said, they are emptying the house, and I asked him, are you taking any of this with you? And he said, no, just take whatever you want. So I picked up the entire collection of the book club editions. I have a dozen, I think, of those. And the joy was that I felt happy reading something that my father read 7 decades ago. This is from the 1950s. It's already 7 decades ago. And it just made me happy to think that I was reading the same thing my father did, like years and years apart. So yeah, that was just joy to read that. And I have others, as you can see above my shoulder, and I have an entire video about it. Yeah, I'm going to have more joy. Question number 12. Favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year? Now, that was an easy one. It is The Death of Stalin by, the author is, I should say, Fabien Nury and Thierry Robin. So this is a French book. I read it in English because the library only had it in English, or maybe they had it in French, but it was in a different branch. So at the main branch where I go, they only had the one in English. And the reason I read that is that at some point this spring there was a few booktubers started to make lists of best historical movies. And I was thinking of making my own list, and I was thinking of that movie, The Death of Stalin. And when I wanted to watch it again before I put it on my list, is it really that as good as I remembered it to be? So I looked at the library, had a copy of it, and I saw that they had a book. And I thought, a book? And that's when I learned that the movie, The Death of Stalin, was actually based on that graphic novel. So I picked up the graphic novel and I picked up the DVD. And I read the graphic novel and I thought, that's not funny. And then I watched the movie and I thought, oh, that is hilarious. So without any shadow of a doubt, the movie is a million times better than the graphic novel. It could be because I'm not good at reading graphic novels. It's a skill. It's something that you have to learn to do. And I don't read tons of them. So perhaps I did not get everything that there was to get out of it. But from what I gathered, it was a bit funny, but not to the same level as the movie. If you have a dark sense of humor, of course, it's not laugh out loud funny. Well, it is laugh out loud funny, but it's not good wholesome family fun. It's dark humor, but if you have a little bit of a dark streak in your humor, you're going to love The Death of Stalin. It's hilarious. It stars Steve Buscemi, and Michael Palin of Monty Python, Jeffrey Tambor from something I don't even remember, and I forgot the actor who plays Beria. And there's Jason Isaacs who plays Zhukov. He's hilarious. Anyway, I absolutely loved the movie. The graphic novel is just meh, but the movie is as good as I remembered it, and it's awesome. So yeah, I recommend the movie. I'm not sure I recommend the graphic novel, but I recommend the movie. Question number 13. Favorite review you've written this year? I don't write reviews, so so there's the alternative. Favorite video you have done this year, and I'm not sure I have a favorite video that I have done. I suppose that the book haul where I present all the books that I brought back from my father's bookcase, the bookshelves that I emptied. I suppose that video is kind of nice. It got quite a few good reactions, so yeah, I'm going to say that one. Question number 14. Most beautiful book you've bought so far. Okay, I have a pile of books on my left, and I realized that there's a question I skipped somewhere because I have a book that is kind of an orphan. It's question 7. I skipped question 7. Favorite new author, debut or new to you? There you go. That's why this little book is there. That would be a romance author, Suzanne Enoch. She's not really a new author. She's 80-something years old. Ooh, there's a step back. As I said, she's 80-something years old, but it's the first time that I read any of her books. I picked this one up at a library sale and I just loved it. It was really, really good. So I'm just going to look for other Suzanne Enochs. It's awesome. So it's my favorite new author. So that was question 7. And then back to question 14. Most beautiful book you've bought so far. So it depends what you mean by beautiful. So if you mean just the cover, then I suppose it would be this, Love in a Fallen City by Eileen Chang. This is part of a collection that I love. Don't be fooled by the title, Love in the Fallen City. You'd think this is in English. No, it's not in English. It's in French. It's in French. And at this collection, Zulma, they have these great graphic covers full of colors, full of patterns, and I just love them. So I think every time that I did this tag since I've joined Booktube, the answer to that question has always been a book from that collection. But just to be a bit different, in case we're talking not so much about what's on the cover, but what's inside, then it would be A Meeting with Remarkable Manuscripts by Christopher de Hamel, because it's full of gorgeous pictures. I haven't read it yet, so it's part of the large number of books that I've started but have not finished. I think I've read the introduction. So yeah, it's about beautiful manuscripts and it comes with beautiful pictures. And I still haven't read it, but I'm going to read it. I'm not worried about that. Yeah. So, and then question number 15. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? None. I'll volunteer for the Booktube prize to read for the finals, so I will have probably 6 books to read, maybe just 5 or 4, depending if any of the books that I've read in the first round make it to the last round, or books that I've read last year, because there's I think 2 or 3 of them that are still in the running that I've read last year and that are still in the Booktube prize. So other than that, there's nothing that I have to read. It's I want to read. And then question number 1, because we are back at question number 1. Best book you've read so far this year. And that is a book that I haven't seen anyone mention on Booktube. It is The Half-Known Life in Search of Paradise by Pico Iyer. I don't know how to pronounce his name. So the author is a writer, and he worked with the Dalai Lama. So he is attuned to questions of religion, among other things, of philosophy, I guess. And he decided to go, so it's a bit of a travel book, but it's not in the travel section of the library, because I read a copy from the library. So this is a non-fiction. It came out in 2023. It's not very long. It's relatively short. And the author went to different places on the planet that either are considered paradise by certain people or that are sacred. And it's a bit of an essay, I guess. And he also refers to a lot of books that he's read and what other people have said about paradise, about heaven, about the notion of heaven on earth, or the links between earth and heaven and things like that. And it's a beautiful read. It's not beautiful like I just showed you, like beautiful pictures. It's just text, but it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful experience. It's I don't know. There's something serene about it, though at the same time there's some parts that are not. That it's heaven for some people, but for some others it's not. That there's, I don't know. I really love that book. It's very hard to pinpoint what it is exactly. So I'm tempted to say musings, but it's more serious than that. About the notions of heaven, the notions of paradise and sacredness and all of that. And I really, really love that book. So that's my favorite so far this year. And I suppose it could have been a bit the book that surprised you the most. Of course, when I picked it up, I thought I would like it, but I didn't think I would love it that much. So that's my best book so far this year. And that concludes my mid-year check-in / freakout tag. And thank you everyone for watching, even though this is a tag I'm not going to tag anyone because it's a bit past the mid-year. Most booktubers who want to do this tag have already done it. And anyway, I didn't say who created the tag because I have no idea. It's one of these tags that have reached the status of public domain, I guess, of just the origins have been lost in the mists of time. Yeah, because Booktube is so old. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine.